So I'm good. You guys good?
Yeah, I'm cold. Who's leading us off?
One of you fucking guys, not me.
I'm Devin. Hi, guys. Hey, what up, guys? Welcome back to Alpha Project. I am Parnell. We got Devin and we got Steve with us.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about failures.
That's exciting.
How to recover from failures, and what you do after a failure really makes you who you are.
I like that. And not just the fact that failure is scary and people shy away from it, and how to actually push yourself through it.
Right.
And what the reward is at the end of it when you do overcome it.
Yeah, and I think we have to touch on, when to fail, how to fail, and
Often.
when
Yes.
when is the appropriate time to mourn that failure and then get over that failure. And I think that's a big thing that guys don't really take the time to actually figure out.
Nobody talks about this stuff because we all see our failures as some kind of measure of who we are. And if we are failing, then the measurement of who we are is very low. It lowers our status. So we hide those things and we don't openly express them. And the problem with that
Who's
is
this we?
that...
Who's this we as a
I think
pejorative?
it's him. He's
It might be just him because it's not me.
So,
Do
okay.
you define yourself by the level of your failures?
Okay, so yes, but not in the direction that I think you're headed. So I
Like how he just cut you off there too. He knows.
I define myself by my failures because when I fail, I know that it creates growth inside of me. So I have a saying, and I think this is a perfect way to kick it off, is fail fast, fail frequent, fail forward.
Mm-hmm.
So fail fast means find the thing that you're not good at in the thing you're aiming for, find what you can't do, and that's your first failure. So fail fast, right?
Why do you fail fast? What's the ideology behind that?
So the quicker you can get there, the faster you can overcome it.
And you can
then
learn from that
continue
mistake.
to progress
Right.
through it, right? So fail fast. Fail frequent means find as many of those holes as you possibly can in yourself and in the thing that you're building, whatever that turns into. So when you fail frequently, you can find those things faster and then get over them. And then fail forward is the last one. I think it's arguably the most important aspect of it, which means if you're failing fast and you're failing frequently, you got to do it in a way that's going to help you overcome it and do something more. So the pejorative we, what I'm really referring to is just kind of society in general as a whole. When we see our failures, we don't want people to see us as less than, because it lowers our status and it inhibits our ability to have, good solid social networks. And, at least that's what I have observed to be the perception of most people I talk to.
All right, podcast over.
Yes, you think that people hide their failures. Is that coming from, and I know what happens to you, and I mean, I'm guilty of that at times too, especially when I was younger. If I fucked up at something, I did not want my friends to know.
Yeah.
I did not want my parents to know, right? I did not want my teachers to know. I didn't want my brother to know. And like, whatever the dynamic is, I didn't want the chick to know. It's like, whatever that dynamic is, as a man, I have, had in my head where I have to be put together and composed and doing cool things and succeeding, because as a man, that's what we're here to do. We have to succeed. We have to provide.
That's the external measurement of our success.
However, in order to succeed, I must fail, because in order to get good at something, I must be bad at something.
See, this is weird. It's like, I mean, in almost every other aspect of life. I mean, we say this in our sales technique for our other companies, right? We dump what doesn't work and we double down on what does, right? This is the common narrative in society and business and things like that guys want to kind of pursue, right? But I don't think people actually realize to double down on what you're good at, you have to first figure out what you're good at. And to figure out what you're good at, you have to fail at the shit you're not good at, right? There's this thing that, especially, and I hate to use, millennials as a pejorative, or Gen Xers, whatever it is, that are coming up that think, again, back to this now society, right? They have everything now, and if it doesn't work the first time, they just quit, right? I came up in a time, and I think I'm a little older than both you guys, I come up in a time where if you failed at something, nobody's going to help you get up. You have to do it yourself and figure it out. My dad would help me out here and there where he could, but he wasn't the master of everything, right? So I had things that I wanted to do, he wasn't interested in, so I had to figure it out myself. And through those failures, it turned me into, a self-sufficient thinking machine, right? I analyze everything and then make the necessary steps to go forward, right? If I failed at something, I can recognize what I failed at and try to take that and apply it to the next thing I'm doing, even if it's not the same thing as what I was doing before.
Because skills are transferable, and what you learn somewhere, you can easily take it and say, hey, this did not work here. However, in this conversation, this might be the same type of dynamic. This is likely not going to work here.
Right.
And in failing, you developed like thick skin.
Yeah,
The resilience
Yeah.
to overcome something.
And you trust yourself. You learn to trust yourself. You pick yourself back up. And then when the hardships approach again, or if you fail again, and when you fail again, right, then it's easy to look back and say, hey, I failed the last time and I got through it.
Right.
Right? Chances are, based
You
on
build
results,
that
I'm going
muscle.
to get through it again.
You build that muscle. I'm going to refer back to what Tony Robbins says. I know I said it last episode as well. Tony Robbins, he says the more you're able to put yourself in that situation that you're not good at, is more reason to do it, because you'll learn so much more by doing things you're not good at and having people explain things in detail. It's a different way of learning almost. You learn what, by reading, writing, or by doing, right? And I think he says it ingrains in you more if you're actually doing the thing and then learning by example, or learning by actually physically doing something, right? And most people don't want to take that chance to learn to do something because they're scared of the failure.
They're scared of doing it wrong. And I'm going to equate
Right.
this to business growth. I mean, I'm young. I'm 30, right? I own my own
You
business.
look 60.
And thanks, brother.
You're
And,
welcome.
you know what? You said Anthony Robbins last week, so now I don't know how old you are at all. However, when you're in
His
your-
name is Anthony Robbins. That's all I'm saying. Hold on. You're not going to throw that out like that, man. Yes, he has a
in the
nickname,
corporate
Tony.
world, or you know what? Not even in the corporate world. In any event, there's two types of people.
Yeah.
There are always going to be people who ask for direction and okay, step by step, how do I do this? And that might be because they're perfectionists, or that might be because they are afraid of getting it wrong. Right. However, then there's the other side of people, and this one was always me, where it was like, okay, cool, here's the end target that we're working towards. I would just go out and do it. And honestly, I got it wrong more often than I got it right. However, more often than not, I accomplished the end result.
That's the
And
beauty
at
of it,
the end
though.
of it was like, okay, cool, yes, we got here. However, you either convoluted the fuck out of the process. You could have done it so much more streamlined, or here's a more effective way to do it.
And then not only that, even if you were failing at whatever, you may have learned a skill that can be transferred into some other aspect of your life, right? So even if you fail, you definitely learn. Like there's a saying, you either learn something or you win. Right. I don't ever fail at anything. I'm going to learn something from that failure, right? Even though it's classified as a failure, I'll say, okay, I did that incorrectly this time. How can I make that better this time? Or I take that and say, yeah, I didn't really like that. I'm not going to do that again. Let's transfer that into something.
Either way, you're ahead of where you were before.
Either way, you're growing as a person, right?
How do you think having a mentor affects that?
Mentors are huge. Mentors are huge in every aspect of your life. However, I would challenge that and say if I were a good mentor, the role is not to educate in the sense of teaching somebody else how to do something or how to replicate. The goal or the primary objective of a mentor is to show alternatives, show you options, and guide the mentee in a way to figure it out for themselves.
Different perspective on different angles, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a guide through the learning process.
Yeah.
So having somebody there, like when you do fail, you fuck up or you fall apart, having somebody there to be like, okay, get up, dust yourself off. What happened?
Yeah.
What's next? Where do you go? What do you
And
do?
I like, Parnell, what you had mentioned earlier when you were growing up, when you were a kid. There wasn't somebody around to pick you up. You had to figure it out for yourself, right? And you had to say, this is something that I did, and you make the decisions. You fall off your bike, right? You have to get up. You have to dust yourself off.
Let's take it in this direction. I'm gonna go. We'll have a chance to say this, but Steve, what was your biggest failure that you learned the most from? So not necessarily the biggest aspect of failing, but the failure that you learned so much more from that one failure than any other win.
The biggest thing in my life, and I'm going to go back to when I was in high school, and I was a great student. Like I was a straight A student. I was in advanced core classes. I chose to make terrible decisions in high school because I was bored. So I was selling drugs all through high school for the most part. And then I never went to school. I would ace every test, right? And I would not show up for the classes. I wouldn't do assignments. So on my report card, it showed up as 0% on assignments. And then like 90%, 95% on exams.
We are way more similar than I thought.
And so what ended up happening then, and I remember this clear as day, is I was getting expelled from grade 12. And we were all sitting in my assistant principal's office, me and both my parents. And the AP was just like, okay, you know what? Your teachers love you. You're great to have in class. You do really well on all your tests. You just don't show up. It's been an ongoing problem, right? So here's the option. If you stay in school and sign this, sign this form that says, I will show up to class on time for every class every day, we'll let you stay in school. Right? Other than that, you're expelled. And my parents were just like, oh, thank you so much. That was awesome. And I'm like, I'm not signing that. Dead ass. I'm like, I'm not signing that.
Fuck this. I am not.
And so I
doing
didn't
that.
sign it. So I got expelled that day. And you know what? That is not my biggest failure, right? In that, I learned. Okay, this is cool. After that, I ended up having to go and I bounced around from a couple different jobs. And then I ended up deciding that I wanted to go to university. And so I went back, I got my GED and I paid for that, right? You have to pay for that with, your own money now. Like school's free in Alberta, right? It's not if you choose to not go.
Yeah.
That's right. Learned that. And you know what? Through this whole process, I ended up getting my GED. I went to university, right? And through all of this, my lesson that I took away from it was everything is a choice. And as a human being, I am entitled to that decision. Yeah. However, every decision comes with either a consequence or a price that you pay. Every success, there are prices that you have to pay. What are you willing to give up? And through that, it took me an extra, 10 years before, getting out of university to realize how powerful that decision is and how easy it is to say, this is not what I want to do right now. However, in that decision, I shut myself off from the next, 10 years of my life because I bounced around. Then I had to go back and redo it all. So.
It's a pretty good life lesson to learn, right? I know education is pretty key. Do you want to go, Devin? You want me to go?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. I had kind of a similar story than you, right? I have a grade 10 education. When I got kicked out of high school for drinking and doing all this shit, not just going to class, I started with the clubs and I started doing some promotions for the clubs. And when you're in that industry, there's a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol, whatever else, right? So I started selling cocaine. And when I put my mind to something, I really double down. I go hard, right? I was moving a lot. I was doing a lot. I had $2 million buried in my backyard at one time. And I thought I was on top of the world. And then I was busted. I was arrested. I was under a 1.5 year surveillance, right? So I got busted for it, trafficking counts and all this other stuff and court procedures. And, before I went to trial, I was on house arrest for 1.5 years before trial, right? During that time, I said, you know what? I can't go out. I have no friends because everybody I knew just knew me from selling drugs, right? So I had no real friends. The only person beside me was my dog that I got and my mother. And I realized that having friends is great to have. Being the life of the party is great to be. But if you're not going to be a solid individual and be happy within yourself, you're never going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. That is still to this day my biggest failure and my biggest learning opportunity. Because without me being arrested, I would probably be dead or in jail right now, right? And a lot of people will say, okay, well, that's not a failure then. Okay, that's right. I didn't fail. I learned a very, very hard lesson, right? 4 years of my life down the drain, not including the time I was dealing, right? 4 years of the jail and the house arrest and all the other bullshit and the probation after that and all this other shit, right? When I took control of who I was and my mentality and who I was as a person, I was able to go, okay, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? Right? So it's almost like a complete reinvention of myself. And that was the learning, that was the lesson that's the foundation everything else that I've built is laying on now. And that is one of the things that I can't even stress it enough to people when I say, well, I've done this and this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Is it the worst thing or the best thing, right?
Nothing happens to you, it happens
exactly.
for you.
A lot of people just say, listen, I don't know what I would do in that situation. And I'm like, well, listen, I got arrested and it was either I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do and be on house arrest and do all this other shit, or I'm going to go to jail for 10 years of my life. Yeah. Pretty easy fucking decision, right? So I think, like you said, the consequences are there. The consequences forced me to be a better person, right? Now, I could have looked at that and said, this is the end of my life. And once this is over, I'm going back to dealing and making all this money back. Because I lost everything. I took everything, right? So I could look at it and say, well, I'm going back to this thing and I'm making all this money again. Or I'm going to change and try to do better and try to influence people instead. Right. So that was my biggest learning
Take
thing.
something from your experiences in that and see what it can do to serve others.
Right. Right.
That's an incredible lesson when you make that shift in your life from thinking you're the only thing that matters to like, oh, what can I do for other people?
Right.
That I love the saying, sometimes to help yourself, you need to help others. That's made a huge impact on my life. I guess my biggest failure was my record label. We were about maybe 11 years in, and on the final year of development, I worked with about 8 different artists. I lost one, I lost another one. One guy beefed with me and wanted to fucking kill me, and like there was a lot of turmoil in that environment. And what I entered that space with, because I dropped out of high school, I didn't even get the option. My dad, he sat me down and he said, listen, you either go to school and get your shit together, or you quit school and go get a fucking job and start trying to do something with your life, because it's obviously not working for you. So that was what was posed to me. And I said, well, fuck school, because I hate everybody there. The friends that I have, as you heard, are not really great people. The teachers showing up to school half-cocked. I remember the guidance counselor, just after witnessing a bus accident where a kid, 140 underneath a bus, headless. Like I watched the dude bubble out and die. As a little kid, I didn't know how to fucking process. I was with a guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor tried to like talk me through shit. I ended up getting institutionalized for a little bit of time and put on drugs and all this other shit. The next year I went back and I was like, oh, hey, fuck that bitch. How you doing? And she was like, I am sorry.
Right?
What's your name? I'm sorry, what's your name? And I was like, whoa, hold on. You just shared an entire year of my life with me. You don't remember my fucking name? So this is what I mean by people showing up half-cocked in my life. And that was my education system. So fuck the education system. No plan B. I'm a musician. I want to be a musician. I played guitar at the time. I was in some screamo band. It was a joke, but music really spoke to me, and I knew that there was a purpose there for me. I wanted to be who the other people were to me. Music influenced me heavily. So started the record label, I went full in, I did all the research, I took courses, and I did as much as I could to further my education. And that's where I started learning what it meant to fail. But I didn't see anything as a failure. It never registered as a failure. It always registered as, oh, that's something I don't know. So let me fix that problem. And that no plan B mentality took me through those 12 years until the final year where I just kind of, the people that I was working with all decided that I wasn't serving them to the highest ability, and that can be argued, but they all decided to go and, branch off and try new things. And it was thanks to somebody who came here from overseas who basically snake oil salesman my whole fucking team, down to the last 3. So it's me, my friend, and my brother. So me, my friend, and my brother are the only ones left. No, two friends. So we're the only ones left standing in the label, but there's still this no plan B mentality where we're still wholeheartedly driven towards success in music as part of, our lives. And what ended up happening was in doing all of that shit, I ended up acquiring transferable skills that I didn't realize at the time were important. One of those things being, I'm now a full-blown audio engineer. I know anything there is to know about sound and audio.
And video.
And I'm a full-blown video production, from directing to final cut editing. I have all of those skills. And the same thing now goes with graphic design. I'm very heavily skilled in that space. Further to that, I had to dive into social psychology and marketing and social media and digital media and creating these things. And so that translated into something. And what ended up happening from the inevitable failure of the record label, because it did end up failing, and now we just independently work as artists, I have a new business out of it, a new thing and a new way to serve people. And that for me has always been kind of the cornerstone to what failure is that there's not actually a failure here. I didn't fail at a record label. What I did was acquire a hugely valuable set of skills that I can charge a ridiculous amount of money for, that you're not going to ever get that even in a management position at a McDonald's. It's not ever going to happen because that is plan B for me. I don't have an education, right? I can't get a job. I'm virtually unemployable.
You know what? That story kind of reminds me of, something I used to say to myself all the time. And I still to this day, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a rapper, right? I had this dream of being on stage and fucking rocking fucking 20,000 people. I used to watch Michael Jackson and you see 100,000, 150,000 people.
Girls like faint just at the sight of him. I'm like, I want that
I wanted that, right? So I can still have that, but it's not going to be as a rapper. Right. I took the skills I was able to acquire being an MC, being a rapper, being a podcaster to say, okay, I can be a keynote speaker
for sure, and
still influence the people I want to influence, and still see a sea of people, and still hear my name chanted, and still have that rush, right? And that it's a good play. So I never say I failed as a rapper. I said my dream wasn't to be a rapper; it was to feel that excitement on stage, right?
Which you can still achieve.
Which I can still do.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to switch my story up just because there was a little bit of overlap there. My actual biggest failure in my life was, after dropping out of school, again, I was a good student. I got given a choice to stay in school and show up or not, and I chose to get expelled. And so I bounced around a lot, did a bunch of different things. I was 22, 23, and I met a girl, and she flipped everything upside down for me.
She did things with her mouth. She
flipped everything upside down for me, and through her, she had at that point inspired me, and I was in a lower place in my life, right? And she had inspired me, and she saw something in me where she said, "Hey, you know what? Like, there's something about this guy," and so we ended up dating for a couple years. While I was dating her, I went back to university, and I really at that point started to make the shift and say, "Hey, previously I was making these decisions. Those decisions are not serving me. So up until now, this is who I was. However, it's a choice that I have to start doing different things, start hanging out with different people, start reading better books, start listening to better music, just making the little decisions and showing up." And at first I was showing up for her, right? And that bled over into my life where it says, okay, if I show up for her and we're experiencing a ton of success here, what happens when I start showing up for me? And that's when I made that shift in my life. And then this is where the biggest failure came in from, was in doing that, I started, receiving a lot more stuff, right? I started moving up in my career. I started doing a whole bunch of cool things. I started driving nicer cars and everything just started happening. And at that point, there was one night I ended up cheating on this girl. I got caught, and when we talked about it, I was open about it. I said, I owned it. I said, this is what happened. Right, I stuck up for myself. I wasn't going to lie to her. Yeah. And she, at that point, gave me the opportunity. She's like, you know what? I can forgive you. Are we in on this? And I felt so guilty at the time. I said, you know what? No. Like, this is not it. We need to take a step back. I need to take a step back from this. Yeah. And then, you lose the girl, right? You lose the girl sticking up for what I believed was right at the time. And she was the biggest single person of my early 20s when, as a dude, you're out of school, you're learning about yourself. She revolutionized my life, and she put me on a completely different path that now I get to say, hey, I look back on. And when I was showing up for myself or showing up for her or showing up for whoever at that point, I was on top of my game. And now what the lesson is when you're showing up and you start seeing the reward, staying true to who you are, staying true to what you value, because it's easy to say, hey, I'm on top. And once you're on top, there's nobody to hold you accountable except yourself.
I'm in this situation right now, not with a girl, but I mean, the other things, the podcast I do has kind of blown up to a spot where I didn't think it would get for another year or so, 2 years maybe. So I'm put in this position where people are looking up to me for maybe leadership or guidance or whatever it is. And I actually, instead of falling into the trap of my ego taking control, I reached out to a few friends of mine that I know have gotten the following, they're influencer, that they have the following, they've made all this money, they know, they've been through these trappings, right? And it was, I won't tell you the extent of the conversations, but what it was is, instead of me going into my own head and saying, I can figure all this out myself, I was like, okay, let me model somebody that's already been there, right? So I didn't want to fail at that point, because I knew if this thing fails, then I would feel, and to this day, I would feel that it would be very detrimental to my mental state. So I didn't want to fail at this one thing. So I made the conscious decision to reach out to people that have done this, that know it. I'm going back to the mentor thing, right? Where they can guide me through these things without me kind of losing my way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because there's an argument there to be said. Yes, we're talking about how the importance of failure. And I don't want that to get confused, because it's not a literal go out and fall down. It's not
Don't
go out to do
intentionally
that.
sabotage yourself.
Because
That's
there's a
fucking
ton
stupid.
of value from, surrounding yourself with people who have gone through it, right? Now that, tying back into the mentor thing, even if somebody else has gone through it, even if you have all of the people in your corner, even if you've read all the books, the chances of you starting something and going through it without getting a scratch it's non-existent.
Yeah.
So yes, give yourself.
And
the
if you do,
tools.
you're not going to be on top long if you do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would argue that there's a paradigm shift that happened, I think, for each of us inside of one of our, many life experiences that caused us to shift our focus away from what that failure means to us, and more so into the space of, how can I grow from this? I'm curious to know, for both of you, what
That's a great way to put that. Say that one more time.
what
Instead of learning something from this, how
Instead of
does
it
it influence me to grow?
Yeah, so I'm curious to understand where that shift happened for you guys in your lives. Like, when did it occur to you, like, oh shit, that was actually a good thing. This is like you said, this is happening for me and not to me. When did that shift happen?
For me, it happened later. And I mean, the girl and I were very good friends now, right? So we obviously you don't talk for a couple of years after. And, she continued to grow and do her thing. And like we talked about last week, the number one thing to do with leadership is have a growth focused mindset. So for me, when I continued to make waves, when I continued to, move up in my life and level up and level up and level up, right? Then I look back and I say, okay, cool. Where was that pivotal shift? And the shift for me was when I was at the bottom, right? After we had broken up and I had owned the fact that it was my fault. And then it was like, okay, you know what, Steve? You have two choices, right? You can sit here and wallow, right? Be fucking depressed for yourself. Or you can say, hey, this happened. Okay, get over it and go fucking do something else. Go create something new. And at that point, when you make the decision to stand up for yourself, when you make the decision to say, yes, this happened. However, there's a lesson to be learned here. How can I get back to this? Because you know what? There's lots of girls in the world. And you know what? When you meet the next one, when I meet that person who is, okay, yes, now I feel exactly how that was. Now I know how to handle the situation when it comes up again, right? Because if you do something and if you make a decision or if you fail and it sucks, you get hurt, you fail, and you lose a company, right? You potentially lose like up to 10 years of your life. Like it's a huge impact. When you're in that space and you accept it and you own it and you take the responsibility for it, if that comes back again, you act differently. You make different choices, right?
I can tell you the exact moment I realized it. The exact moment. It was 2011.
1994.
2011 Scotiabank Marathon. Finish line of the Scotiabank Marathon.
Like a running marathon?
Yes.
You ran a marathon?
So here's the story. So
All right.
when I was selling drugs, I had gotten up to about 310 pounds. I was always a big guy. Right? When I was arrested, the only thing I was allowed to do was go to work, come home, emergency medical appointments, and the judge was nice enough to give me an hour and a half out for the gym. So I said, fuck it. I'm running this thing the whole way. I'm not stopping. I'm going to prove to myself that I can do this, right? Because there wasn't many things in my life that I had done that I was proud of. So I wanted to be proud of something, right? And I knew this would cap off losing all that weight. This would be like, okay, I actually fucking did it. I crossed the finish line, 3 hours, 23 minutes.
It's fast.
Wow.
3 hours, 23 minutes. I crossed the finish line and I fell to my knees and I started fucking crying. That's when I realized that when you make a shift and you're determined and you put everything you are into something from the negative shit that had happened to you, there's more to be learned from doing things yourself than making other people happy. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Even though now my life is to give back and to, help other people, that's selfish because it makes me feel good. Right. But
that weird moment, duality, right?
Yeah, that moment was for me.
Something for somebody else. Yeah. That has no give back to you whatsoever.
Exactly. That was the moment. I everything's clear. I know it exactly. Like I can see it.
Such a vivid memory of something. Yeah.
And whenever things are starting to go bad in my life, I think back to that moment. I say, listen, if you could do that, if you can be in 4 years of house arrest, avoid 10 years of jail, lose 135 pounds, lose all your friends, have nobody else in the world, and you only had to rely on yourself. If you can fucking do that, you can do anything. Mm-hmm. So for the people that come into my life now, like Devin, like yourself, I'm very choosy at who's in my life, right? I've literally left millions of dollars on the table from the last company I left to work with Devin because that situation wasn't something I wanted to be a part of. Mm-hmm. There's more to life than all the money you can buy things, right? I mean, there's more to your self-worth and your self-sacrifice and what you've done for yourself and how you've gone past those failures that anybody else could ever offer.
And this ties in really well, and I'm excited to hear your turning point here. I have to bring this up for the next topic, though, is social media. Right. And how rampant the lack of failure, and how everybody's immediately wealthy. Everybody is partying on yachts. Everybody is bottle service and limos, and that's not the real world.
No, it's not. Except on social media.
Except on social media, because on
there's
social
a
media,
huge
you can
disconnect.
make it whatever you want. However, picture. I'm so glad I grew up when I did, right? And it was still just before social media. Imagine being a kid in like junior high now,
right?
And you see nothing except constant bombardment of this is what cool is. This is how you have to be,
and you don't have the tools to deal with it.
And filtered pictures for girls, right? Where there's filtered pictures. People are like, oh, if I don't look like that, I'm not going to be accepted, and all this other shit, man. Like,
and
it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle for me, especially when I'm online. I'm doing those things. I'm like, I'm constantly telling people, listen, don't worry about fucking negative shit. Like, somebody's not always what they post. They are, or what they post to be, right?
Well, the way people just expel judgment in those environments is appalling. But I have learned something that I think is going to be a valuable thing to pass on to my son, and should you guys choose to adopt this, maybe to yours. The idea that somebody's judgment is largely a reflection of their own personal insecurities, the things that they're insecure about themselves. And so because of that insecurity, in order to protect themselves,
they lash out.
They cut other people down so that they can hide behind that insult or whatever have you. And I've slowly become empathetic to it. And I think it started when I started recognizing those flaws in other people, in myself. So the reason why I think I constantly strive for self-development and making a better person in myself is so that when I do show up in the rest of the world, I can give back in some meaningful way. I don't even know what that looks like or how that translates as of yet. Because I still feel like I'm on the tip of the iceberg of the impact that I'm going to have in my life.
But the more of you put out and the more of you give, the more you're going to receive eventually.
And absolutely shamelessly, because if I don't know, I've spent some time in self-development and understanding psychology and social behaviors, and so I feel like I'm not necessarily, a scientist with a degree. I don't have a document from an accredited facility to support my knowledge base, but the knowledge base is still the same. I have read the books written by the professors that teach at these schools. I've watched the videos and the talks, and like RI, the Royal Institute, they always do talks on different scientific developments, and these are really top end fucking professors teaching complicated quantum physics.
High-
And it's like a
high-level
hobby
ideas,
for me
high-level
to
ideas,
like understand physics for whatever fucking reason. But so I might not have a doctorate in it, but I do have a confident knowledge in it. And when I try to share that with people, sometimes I'm met with very firm disagreements. And so I'm forced to examine, why am I sharing these things? Why am I saying, this is a better way of doing things? Well, it's because I recognize in myself those flaws and those things that I've worked on and fixed, and because of the research. And so I'm like, but this will help you. And so if my objective is truly to help somebody, being combative isn't going to achieve that goal. Calling them a fat loser isn't going to accomplish the goal of helping them become a better person. And so it literally goes against my own mantra of leaving people better than when I found them.
It goes against your hierarchy of values, right? We all have a hierarchy of values, right?
Totally.
And most people have put, they'll put whatever else. There's top 3 or 4 or 5 of them, right? Where if you really examine your hierarchy of what you want to accomplish, you'll always revert back to that number 1. So if you're doing something at the number 5, that's your number 5, but it conflicts with your number 1, you're going to jump that and go right back to it, right?
And you're going to, all of these, when you come into, adversity, or if you come into stress or anxiety or out of your comfort zone, that's why pushing yourself out of your comfort zone regularly is so important, so you can develop that muscle to say, this is how I'm choosing to react. Because when shit gets uncomfortable, you guarantee you're going to fall back into that default
habit.
Default habits.
Can you put an overlap on the video right here of Maslow's hierarchy of values so that they can understand what the fuck we're talking about?
Right, yeah. And probably a link in the description to some kind of article kind of outlining that I think would be valuable too.
Hey, why don't you go back? Why don't you tell us about your turning point?
I think it was very similar to yours. So I was in this race for some reason. I don't know why, but I think I do know why.
Running.
I put it back on.
Props.
So my models, as humans, we model the people in our environment. And that becomes the standard. This is how you're supposed to be. And so my parents have been married for however many fucking 40 years or some fucking thing, or 50, or I don't know. Been together a really long time. And so to me, there was this objective, this goal of getting married and settling down, and then you build with your queen. Do you see what I'm saying? So that was my model. At least that was what I had been fed my whole life.
It's so interesting. It's so backwards of the game plan I laid out for myself.
Right. And interestingly enough, I got married to what I think was not an early age. I was 28 when I got married, and I thought that was, it seems to me like around the right time. It just, in my head, it made sense. I fell in love with this girl. We were together for a long period of time, and we shared a lot of values and beliefs. And this is the thing that I would argue, is those values and beliefs is actually what connects us as human beings. It's not our common interests. You're a sports guy. I fucking don't know a fucking thing about sports. I'm a music creative dude. But how do we get along so well? How are we like BFFs? The reason is because we share very common values and beliefs in how we show up in the world. So I decided to get married, and then about a year into our marriage, we had our kid. And there was a turning point where the relationship just kind of went south. And there's a lot of reasons to blame. I wasn't showing up. I'm going to accept responsibility for myself. I can't say anything else about anybody else involved. But for me, I wasn't showing up wholly as a leader and as a man should in that environment. I was very weak. I was very insecure, and I let those insecurities bleed over into the way that I interacted inside of my marriage. So I'm going to fully accept responsibility for that. Now, what happened for me was we ended up getting divorced. Well, separated. We broke up. We stopped living together, and I really wanted to just have a grand hurrah, fuck you. And to me, what that represented was, I'm just going to magically overnight become super fucking successful, and you're going to regret leaving me, and you're going to come crawling back.
What every guy does. Right? Yeah. What every guy does, yeah.
the 3 stages.
Give it a sports car, give me all the broads, and I'm flying to Vegas, baby. Let's go.
And then putting everything on social media.
Right?
Yeah, and that's what
fuck.
Super cliche. That was the route that I took. And I'm very embarrassed of it looking back. It's very adolescent, very petty, some of the shit that I did. Not to outline how fucking petty I actually was. This is how far I'll go. So I'm a musician. I have a bank of music. I've been making music my whole fucking life. We've released several albums.
Yeah, we get
up
it.
to
You're
this
talented.
point.
Fuck.
I had some music in the bank that was, related to our relationship. Some of the good stuff, some of the bad stuff. But I just it didn't fit on any of the group projects that I'd ever done with the people that I was working with. So I decided to revive some of these projects that were 2 or 3 years old. So I compiled them into an album, and I called the album The Love Story. I wrote a few more after we'd divorced, the title track being Fuck You Bitch.
Seems healthy.
Listen, I'm telling you, I get it. I was petty as fuck. It was actually a really nice song, but whatever. And then I put the album together, and then I did this whole fucking promo. And when I was doing that, I realized that the date that the range that I was looking for actually fell on our wedding anniversary. So I took our photo of us together and smashed it on the ground and took a picture of the smashed photo of us and put that as the album cover artwork. And it still lives there, as embarrassing as it is. The music's not really that bad. What I wanted to create was the life cycle of a love story. So that's what it was, our whole entire life story. But then I put it out on our anniversary, and there was this whole, I wrote probably I don't know what you call a mini essay, which is the story of our relationship, how it started.
Yo, you're an asshole, dude.
Yeah, right.
What the
I get it.
fuck?
So it was in those moments, and this is what it was. It was in the reflection of that, some conversations that I had with some very close friends and family members. Maybe I had taken it a little too far, and it caused this moment of fuck, I got to do some deep self-evaluation here to what it is that I'm doing, because everything in it was so malicious and poisonous, and I could feel it in my fucking bones. And I'm telling you this, man, I look back at videos of myself from that era of my life, and I look sick. I look like I am dying. Mm-hmm. And probably because I was literally just fucking killing myself. I was drinking myself stupid. I was smoking. I was not sleeping. I wasn't exercising or taking care of myself. And it really, truly started to manifest. And I still, to this day, suffer with maybe a very low, a refrigerator hum kind of anxiety over the person that I was and no longer want to be. But it was in those moments of self-reflection and examination that I was like, fuck, this is not who I thought I was.
And it takes getting there in order to recognize that. And it sucks, man. That's I agree with Pernell, man. You were a dick.
You were a dick.
And I will own it, man.
You know what I got from that?
Still to this day, I regret making some of those decisions.
Here's what my takeaway from that story is that, you were able to realize it in yourself through the people that are in your life, right? And whether that were family or friends, whatever, it's difficult to sit here and be like, hey guys, I'm the perfect guy. I know everything and this and that, right? Without guidance, right?
I think that's the whole point of this podcast, is to express that's
exactly.
ideal. It doesn't exist.
Shit happens. You can't be a shitty fucking person.
You have a choice to be a better person.
Yeah, if you take that opportunity and become a better person.
That's what I'm getting to. Is this is our second episode of this podcast, and even over the 2 episodes, I've realized so much more about myself, and this for me is therapy. I know it's strange. It's strange to say, right?
4 a.m. on a Saturday night,
right? But it's strange to say, right? I'm hearing the pain and the struggles in your guys' voices and your stories, and it's resonating with me in a way, because even right now I'm going through things, right? And how we choose to handle those things is how I choose to handle those things is by open communication. Right. And by having other guys, and this is the problem in our society, there's not a whole bunch of other guys you can have these conversations with, right? You have one friend or maybe 2 friends that guys can actually talk to. It's mostly probably somebody's mother or their father or cousin or whoever they're closest with. Guys don't do this like girls do, right? Girls have these conversations all the time, right?
We have the stigma.
So it's like I'm learning every week. I'm learning more and more about you guys. And because you guys are so open, and hopefully I am as well, that it creates almost more of a bond than just having the ribbing and the bullshitting and the playing around and the the little knocks on each other, right?
Yeah. Which is still important.
It is still important.
That's still
Just as
It is still
important
important.
as
However,
having the
and we
transparency
talked
and
about this last
communication.
week as well, and when you're able to, trust yourself and have the confidence it takes to be vulnerable. And this goes back into the piece where being vulnerable does not mean be weak. Being vulnerable
It's strength.
means it's very, very strong.
I think I did post it on social media, didn't I?
What makes
A while
the
back?
what makes the
talked about it
difference
last
in
week.
that? Like, what's the distinction between vulnerable and weakness? I have an opinion on that, but I'm curious to know what you guys think the distinction is between those two things: weakness and vulnerability.
So to be vulnerable, it actually takes courage. It actually takes it takes.
You're exposing yourself.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out
Exposing
there.
yourself
See,
because you're there and you recognize that there is a bigger goal, and in order to achieve that,
You're
it
saying-
means you need to get to the core. And what you just said,
Yeah.
I'm learning more about you guys, and in that act, it creates trust. There's a bond that gets
Yeah.
created where you know about the other person, and it's not like I'm telling you guys stories that I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
And because when you expose information like that, the
you're
scarcity
waiting for
mindset
somebody to hit you in the face with
to
something.
either say
Instead,
this makes you a shitty person,
Yeah.
or this is not good, or for like maybe fuck that you go take it and use it against you somewhere.
see,
Yeah.
here's the thing. Like, I promise this is the last time I equate anything to my podcast. On this episode, the Morning Pee. Check it out. When I'm recording the Morning Pee podcast, right? It's me putting my stories and my opinions and everything for the world to hear, literally the world, right? And I get so much negative feedback from it. And it's not that I thrive off that negative feedback. It's that I can look at that, I can analyze it and say, you know what? This person's mad at me because he experienced this in his life. I can literally tell exactly what they've gone through because of things I've gone through in my life, right? And when I express these things to, Devin's the guy I talk to the most. When I express these things to Devin, he always comes with, he's never judgmental, right? And I think guys are, this is off the topic a little bit, I think guys are a little too judgmental of other guys, right? We're always trying to compare ourselves to other people,
So
right?
is that judgmental of other people or judgmental of ourselves?
That's the thing.
Right, but as we said before.
That's what I was getting
For
to.
me, full disclosure, I judge myself
Yeah.
harder than I judge anybody else.
That's the thing. I always say this all the time. I'm harder on myself than anybody else could ever be on me.
Yeah.
So, and I put more pressure and more dedication on myself than anybody else could ever. So nobody's ever going to be disappointed by how I'm reacting or how I'm acting or how I'm doing business, because I have more pride than anything to make this the best thing we could do, no matter what that thing is, right? And what I was getting at is that when we're having these conversations and you're explaining it to somebody, you're being vulnerable to somebody. If that's the right person, they're going to show compassion and empathy.
Totally.
If not, then they haven't grown enough as a person, because they're going to be judgmental and start criticizing.
For sure.
Right? So you have to have these conversations with the right people, right? You have to be able to recognize yourself in the person you're talking to. Right?
Totally.
I feel like I can have the conversation I have with Devin with you, and you're not going to judge me for it, because you're going to take what I say and equate that to your life and say, you know what, I've been in this situation before. It's almost similar. This is how I got through it.
And the follow-up that goes along with that, the other thing that we do as dudes a lot of the time is just the way our brains are wired, is we have to fix things. So when
Yes.
we're vulnerable with other men,
Competition and to fix
it's
it.
either a, whose dick
Yeah.
is bigger competition, or it's, oh dude, just go do this, and then now it's a solution, right? When
And then
in
you feel
reality,
like, oh,
This
I'm
is the
so
biggest
weak.
problem. This is
When
the
in
biggest problem when
reality,
guys
yeah.
talk to women, because women don't want us to solve shit
they just
sometimes.
want us to listen.
They just want us to listen.
Shut
Shut
the
the
fuck
fuck up and listen. This is one of the greatest fucking... Listen, this is one of the greatest things you will ever know. Okay, if you ever with a woman, shut the fuck up and listen when she's yelling at you. Okay, just shut
just
the fuck
listen.
up. It's one of the greatest things you'll ever know. It's gonna be tough. Trust me. You want to yell. You want to
Because
scream.
the default mode is to, how can I fix this?
Right. Because we are hunter-gatherers. We want to provide. We want to provide the solutions, right?
So in being vulnerable, and let's go back to vulnerable and weakness. Weakness, in my mind, is being unable to do something. And that's either because we haven't developed the skills yet, right? We don't have the knowledge. Weakness is, by definition, in my mind, just saying, I'm unable to do this.
It's nothing.
That's not
It's nothing
being
physical.
vulnerable.
It's nothing physical.
A small piece of a larger thing.
Right. Yeah. As a child, like before I could walk, I was walking was a weakness.
Your
I could
legs
crawl.
were weak, yeah.
However, I
Right, by the
practiced.
definition.
Right. I got stronger. I put myself through it, and I attempted to do it over and over and over again. And then it turned into a strength. Right now, fuck, I can walk anywhere.
Yeah, look
Can
at me
you?
walking around and shit.
I stumble. I trip on air. I don't know about me, man. I don't know if I can walk.
So it sounds to me like there is the biggest distinction is actually just willingness. The willingness to be
Uncomfortable.
to be weak,
To be uncomfortable.
to identify that said weakness, to be uncomfortable, and to charge head on into what it's going to take to use that discovery of weakness to improve.
To provide the solution for the weakness.
Any weakness can become a strength, right? You said that you're a great graphic designer. Like, graphic designer is a weakness of mine. I am not good. I'm not a good artist, right? I recognize that. I have lots of strengths. A weakness is, being artistic and, drawing shit out. Right? I know that. Can I train that? Absolutely. Right? I can be vulnerable and say this is a weakness and I can address it. And in my opinion, that's where strength comes from first, is addressing where your strengths are and where your strengths are not.
Right. We need to address the stigma between saying, vulnerability is this major thing, right? A vulnerability or a weakness could be something as trivial as I can't, my cursive writing isn't as strong. So I'm weak at cursive writing. It's not this big, huge life-changing thing, right? Yeah. But to be able to be like ultra vulnerable and tell your deepest, darkest secrets to somebody, you first have to practice. Everything takes practice, just like what Devin says, right? So if you can start with, I'm not good at handwriting, to I'm not good at typing numbers on my phone when I dial because my fingers are too fat, to my spelling's not great, to
I'm not good at math,
or the trivial things that don't really matter in society as a whole, nobody's going to judge you harshly for it, to saying, in some cases, I was raped when I was 7. That's a vulnerability.
Right.
You know what I mean? Somebody says that to me and you're like, whoa, that's sharing a lot. Let's break that down. Are you willing to get into this, right? There's levels to everything. Right.
So
if you can attack the level 1, then you can get to level 5 and level 10.
And you have it's always comes back to repetition, practice. And when we talked last week, here's your box. Go to the edge of your box and take one more step. That's your uncomfortable zone, right? I'm not saying go to the edge of your box and then run a marathon outside your box. Like, you will fail and it will suck.
I didn't.
Push yourself a little bit further and a little bit further, right?
Right.
Because then all of a sudden that thing that was uncomfortable, I have a good girlfriend of mine, and she was not great at math, and she really held it close to heart, and it really ate her alive, and she, defined herself for it. She let that one little thing define her life, right? And then it gets to a point, and she was able to break through and say, who cares? There's lots of other things I'm good at.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden that, that program, that definition, that label of I'm not good at math does not own you anymore.
Now she can say I'm strong at these things.
Right.
And say and be like, this math thing, that's cool. I can always hire somebody to do my math for me.
Right.
Right. I'm good at these things. So that's where I go the double down thing, right?
Yeah.
Recognize what you're vulnerable at, but then also double down on your strengths. If you should always try to improve your vulnerabilities or your weaknesses, right? Yeah. But double down on your strengths, because the more you double down on stuff you're good at, it gives you confidence. It gives you the ability to say, listen, I'm good at this, which means if I'm great at this, I can probably attack this too. Even though I'm a little weaker at it.
And you're way more likely to attempt to tackle something that you're not good at when you're in your flow state and you're vibing and you're going like 100 miles an hour at what you are good at. Because when you're smashing shit out and you're knocking it down and you're like, here's a goal, done. Here's another goal, done. Right? Now, how easy is it to say, hey, that thing that really intimidates me, right? I'm going to go do it.
So, I think a very valuable first step would be to stop judging others.
For sure.
Stop looking at other people and analyzing them and breaking them down into what their positives and negatives are. In fact, don't even pay attention to those other people. And when you stop judging those other people, you may or may not find you stop judging yourself, because you don't hold this false standard
and
so
you let
high.
Go. And what was really powerful for me, I'm going to put this into one sentence, and I'm tying it back to what my turning point was when I forgave myself.
Yep.
When it was like, okay, you know what? This happened. Responsibility, it's in the past. Why is this defining? Why am I allowing a bad decision that I made to define the rest of my life? And that's the most freeing thing.
That was the reason I crumbled at the finish line. And I dropped to my knees and I started crying, because I finally was able to forgive myself for all the bullshit I put myself through. I was able to forgive the people that I thought were my friends, or my family who wasn't there at certain points when I needed them, right? I was able to forgive my sister for being addicted to fucking heroin. There were so many things in my life that I was being, you know what? This isn't my fault. This isn't my fault, and I forgive you guys.
Now, why do we carry those things with us?
And you let go of that label, and all of a sudden you can do anything. You can redefine yourself.
It was literally like, and I know this is going to sound so fucking, whatever, cherry picky, whatever you want to call it. It's like that rock is lifted off your chest.
Totally.
Right.
And when you remove the previous labels, when you remove the limiting labels that you have on
Those
yourself,
limiting beliefs.
what you're able to do at that point is give yourself a new label, right? Now I am powerful. I am a leader. I am confident, right? You can do whatever you want to do. And this is another, Tony Robbins thing, and it's still about physiology, right? If you're sitting somewhere, if you're in like a negative feedback loop and shit's really tough and it's like, oh, you know what? I had a shitty breakfast. I didn't work out. And now I'm grumpy and I'm pissed off and I'm tired. Just get up. I do this at work. Like get up, do 5 jumping jacks.
Smile.
And then while you're doing that, what it does is it interrupts the negative feedback loop. And then it's like, think about something that you love. And for me, and like I fucking love pizza. Pizza is my favorite. So it's like, okay, I'll do 5 jumping jacks and I'll think about pizza. And then it's like, oh, I smile and laugh. I'm like, you idiot, you just jumped around a room. Now you're thinking about pizza.
I literally do this all the time.
You change everything. Everything changes. Your whole energy changes.
My whole persona online is that of the guy that's the pattern interrupter, right? I'm the guy that says the most off the wall shit because it stops you dead in your tracks. You go, wait a second.
Do you really just say that?
Yeah.
Hey, wait, you said you weren't going to reference your podcast
I
anymore.
know. No, that was online. I'm talking social media, right?
Fail
That's like
fast, fail frequent.
yeah. But it's like and when I say things, people either get really upset. Or like when I'm typing on Facebook or on wherever I'm at, right? People either get really upset or they agree with it or they say, what the fuck's happening right now? Right? And when I'm in an argument, even if I'm face to face with somebody and I feel it's starting to get a little heated, I'll just say like, hey man, nice cherry shoes. And they're like, what the fuck are cherry shoes? You know what I mean? But
You say the randomest shit.
completely disrupts their thinking. And they can't be mad, happy. They can't have any emotion except for confusion at that time, right? So it interrupts them. It interrupts me. And then we can just refocus. Okay, we understand that was stupid, right? All right, let's get back into something.
Let's dial it in again.
Right.
I think there's one tiny actionable thing that I
I
could offer that I think might be super helpful here. One of the things that really helped me create a major shift in myself was when I was able to just pause for a minute and observe the humanity in the people around me. And this is back to go to the bar by yourself and have a drink. When you go to the bar by yourself and you have a drink, 90% of the time that you're there is spent in your head, like worried about what people are looking at you. I'm the weird old guy at the bar now drinking by himself. Oh, fuck, everybody fucking hates me. And you get stuck in that conversation in your head. So the thing that broke my pattern in judging other people and being so negative was when I was like, what is that person thinking right now? What's going on in their head? And it's weird because it creates this shift. And all of a sudden I started noticing that person was thinking the thing that I was thinking. They're sitting there in their friends group like, nobody cares about me. Everybody's looking at me and judging me, and I don't, if my hair's not perfect and my smile's not right, and nobody's gonna love me. And now I start observing that in other people, and it's really cool because it's a superpower now because I see that in somebody else, and I'm able to now be like, how can I change that person's thing that they're going through right now? How can I interrupt their pattern and give them something? When you approach somebody like that and you break them out of they're like, whoa, what? You can see them come out of this daze that they're in, and they're like, oh, another human. And all of a sudden this life comes out of them. Yes.
It's like communication and camaraderie, right? Like more friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the final word on this, but before I do, my biggest thing to get over, failure and weakness, and because everything we talk about kind of is all interactive, they all kind of work with within each other, right? They're all interwoven. How the fuck do you say that? Interwoven? Interwoven.
I think that sounds right.
Woven inter.
Yeah, woven inter. My biggest thing is, it's almost the same as Devin. I used to have dinner by myself once a week, right? I'd be in a public place, but I would focus extremely hard on eye contact with everybody. Everybody even slightly looked my way, I would just look at them. And I wouldn't look away until they would look away. And it wasn't because I was trying to establish dominance. It was so that I could get my confidence up. Because the more you look at somebody in their eyes, the more confident you feel. The more, not power you hold over them, but power you have over yourself to be able to say what you need to say in any situation.
It's almost like an open connection.
You need to do. Yeah. Do what you need to do in that communication.
So much with people's eyes, right?
So that was one of the biggest things. And when I failed and people would call me on it, I was able to look them dead in their eye and say, yes, I failed, but here's what I learned from it, right? I had so much confidence that when I failed, it didn't affect me because my confidence was always there. It was like a landing pad, right? It was like the pole vaulter's pad that they land on, right? I would hit that thing and bounce right the fuck up because you can't hold me down. It's not going to hold me back. It's going to push me forward because this is who I am. I have so much confidence in myself. you can't tear me down.
Yeah. And when you
The
realize
confidence
that,
came from failing so many times that you
Right.
trusted yourself as a result.
Right, and that, like I said, that all stemmed from looking people in the eyes, right? Being able to have that confidence.
there it is. That's how we make that positive. What are the positive results of being comfortable
You
with failing?
failing so much that it doesn't
Bam.
affect you.
There it is.
You trust yourself.
I'm taking his confidence.
Okay.
Pain.
That's a positive thing?
Pain is
Success,
definitely
I think.
positive, yeah. Vulnerability.
More friends.
Social connections.
More lucrative business.
Yeah. I'm like,
And hey, no, check this
Money,
out. 'Cause
money,
we
money.
can end this on this too. I really think that the importance, we dabbled in this a little bit, and I'm going to re-hammer this home. And this is going to be my call to action, my challenge for everybody watching this for the week, is go out in your circle of dudes. It's like maybe like when you're playing Call of Duty or whatever, when you're seeing people, I know it's a COVID world right now, take the risk, right? These are your best friends. These are your boys. When you're out with the boys, tell them something about you that they don't know, right? Take that risk. You know, tell your boys something that makes you uncomfortable, that makes you vulnerable, right? And create that. Be the leader in your own group to create that next level of companionship, of camaraderie.
And I hope-
have and build that clan.
and I hope we inspired, the listener, the watchers, listeners, whatever, and people enough that by being vulnerable.
People.
Yeah. I hope we inspired you guys enough that, by showing our weaknesses and our biggest failures, that you are able to even just take the next step. Like I said, start small and work your way up, and start with the right people. Start with the people you trust, because if you start small to the wrong person and that goes sideways, it's going to be a lot harder to get back on and be trustworthy for somebody else.
And this is the other thing too, is when you're doing this, I mean, it's about failing fast and failing forwards, right? When you fail, I would sure as hell rather run in a direction until I fail or recognize that it's not the right direction to be running, and then I know to run the other way, right?
Yeah.
Rather than slowly, walking or, moping around and, not really getting anywhere and spending 20, 30 years walking in the wrong direction and not realizing it until it's too late. Let me find out. Let me find out in a month. Let me find out in 3 months.
And let me tell you something, and just for people that are looking for jobs, employers would rather see you on your resume how many times you failed and got back up, dusted yourself off, and what you've learned from that, than have not failed.
Same with relationships with
And
women
relationships.
or men, your significant others, however you show up there. They want to know that when you show up, you fucked up enough in the past that you're over that shit. You're not going to make those same
Who are you?
mistakes in that
Do you
relationship.
know who you are, right? Do
Yeah.
you know what you're bringing to the table? Do you know where you failed previously, and have you learned from it?
And since this
100%.
is Alpha Project, just before we go, this is what I do with my son, right? When my son does something negative or something I don't want him to do, I always say, listen, I'm a lot older than you. I'm 30 years older than you, buddy. Whatever you've done, and I equate whatever he's done to something that I've done. That's very similar. Yeah. Said, whatever you can do, I've done it too. It's not to break him down. It's to be like, listen, I understand this is what you're going through because I've been there, right? So being able to show him that failing has made me who I am, because he's failing the same way I failed the same way he is. By showing him that I've failed the same way he is, and I'm a man now, and I'm able to be the man that he looks up to, he can look at that and say, you know what, that's a positive thing. So now failing, my son is 8 years old, he loves to fail.
Creates trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, boys.
I love the boys.
Appreciate it.